When my 8-year-old daughter, Brielle, came home sobbing because a classmate called us poor, I never expected her response the next day would leave her entire class in tears, including the teacher. I'm Demi Stone, and I've been raising Brielle alone for 2 years now. Every night I kiss her forehead and leave for my 12-hour shift at City General Hospital while she sleeps peacefully in her bed. I work as a nurse, taking care of people when the rest of the world is dreaming. It's not glamorous and it's definitely not easy, but it pays our bills and keeps food on our table. Brielle is everything to me. She's smart, curious, and has this incredible way of seeing the world that constantly amazes me. At 8 years old, she's already talking about becoming a doctor so she can help people like I do. We live in a small apartment, and money is always tight, but we're happy. Or at least, I thought we were happy until that Tuesday afternoon when she came home from school completely destroyed. As a single mom working nights, I've always worried about the things Brielle might be missing. The school events I can't attend because I'm sleeping after a long shift. The expensive toys other kids have that we simply can't afford. The family vacations that exist only in her imagination. But I never imagined that my work schedule, something I do out of love and necessity, would become a source of shame for my little girl. What happened in her 3rd grade classroom that day changed everything between us. It forced me to confront my worst fear as a mother, that my circumstances were hurting the person I was trying hardest to protect. But what Brielle did the next day taught me something about strength, dignity, and the power of perspective that I'll never forget. Mrs. Lennox has been Brielle's teacher since the beginning of the school year, and she's always been kind to both of us. She understands that I work nights and has been flexible when I need to adjust pickup times or miss parent conferences. Crew, the boy who would challenge everything we believed about ourselves, comes from one of the wealthier families in the district. His parents both work traditional day jobs, and from what I can tell, money has never been a concern for them. This story isn't just about bullying or being poor. It's about the moment when a child learns to transform shame into pride. When she discovers that the things that make her different might actually make her stronger. It's about the day my daughter taught an entire classroom and her mother what real wealth actually looks like. Our life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And until that devastating Tuesday, I thought Brielle understood that what we have is enough. Every morning at 7:30, I drop her off at Maplewood Elementary School with a packed lunch and a kiss on her cheek. She bounds out of our old Honda Civic with her backpack bouncing, always eager to learn something new. While she's in class, I go home to our small 2-bedroom apartment and try to catch a few hours of sleep after working all night at the hospital. The apartment isn't much to look at from the outside. The building is older, with faded brick walls and a parking lot that's seen better days. But inside, Brielle and I have created something warm and loving. Her artwork covers our refrigerator, and her favorite books are stacked on every available surface. We have a reading corner by the window where she curls up with stories about brave princesses and adventurous kids, always asking me questions about the characters and their choices. Money is tight. There's no denying that. I work 12-hour shifts 3 nights a week at City General Hospital, and sometimes I pick up extra shifts when the bills pile up or when Brielle needs something special for school. The work is exhausting but meaningful. I hold the hands of scared patients in the emergency room, help deliver babies at 3 in the morning, and comfort families during their darkest hours. When I come home at 7 in the morning, my feet ache and my scrubs are wrinkled, but I know I've made a difference in people's lives. Brielle has always been proud of what I do. When her class studied community helpers last year, she chose to write about nurses, specifically about me. She drew a picture of me in my blue scrubs with a stethoscope around my neck, standing next to a hospital bed with a big smile on my face. The caption read, "My mom helps sick people feel better." Mrs. Lennox hung it on the bulletin board for the entire month, and Brielle glowed with pride every time she saw it there. Our daily routine works for us, even if it's different from other families. I pick Brielle up from school at 3:15, and we spend the afternoon together. She tells me about her day while we walk through the grocery store, choosing what to make for dinner. We count out coupons together, and she helps me find the best deals on the things we need. She's learned to be resourceful, understanding that we have to be careful with money without feeling ashamed about it. Evenings are our special time. We cook dinner together in our small kitchen, with Brielle standing on a step stool to reach the counter. She stirs pasta sauce while I chop vegetables, and we talk about everything from her favorite books to her dreams of becoming a doctor. After dinner, we sit at our little table and work on her homework together. Math problems, spelling words, reading assignments. I help her with everything, making sure she knows that her education is the most important thing in our world. Bath time is filled with laughter and silly songs. Brielle loves to make foam sculptures with her bath bubbles, creating elaborate castles and animals while telling me stories about each creation. I sit on the bathroom floor, my back against the wall, listening to her imagination run wild. These moments feel precious, like we're storing up happiness for the harder times. Our bedtime routine is sacred. I tuck her into her twin bed with the pink comforter she picked out at a thrift store, and we read together for at least 30 minutes. Sometimes it's chapter books that we're working through together, and sometimes it's picture books that she's mastered and wants to read to me. Her confidence grows every night as she sounds out difficult words and asks thoughtful questions about the stories. Before I leave for work, I always spend extra time with her. We talk about the next day, what she's looking forward to at school, and what she wants to do when I get home. I kiss her forehead and tell her how proud I am of her, how much I love her, and how she makes every sacrifice worth it. She usually falls asleep within minutes of my leaving, safe and content in our small but loving home. Brielle has friends at school, but I've noticed that she doesn't get invited to as many birthday parties or play dates as some of the other kids. The parents in our district are mostly professionals with traditional schedules and bigger houses. They drive newer cars and wear clothes that don't come from discount stores. But Brielle has never complained about what we don't have. She's always seemed grateful for what we do have, focusing on the love and attention I give her rather than the material things we can't afford. That's why what happened on that Tuesday afternoon caught me completely off guard. I thought we were doing fine. I thought our little world was strong enough to withstand any outside judgment. I was wrong. Tuesday started like any other day. I dropped Brielle off at school with her usual enthusiasm, watching her run toward the building with her backpack bouncing against her small frame. She turned around at the entrance and waved at me like she always does, her smile bright and carefree. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that same smile would be replaced by tears of humiliation and confusion. I went home and managed to get about 4 hours of sleep before my alarm went off at 2:30. I showered, grabbed a quick snack, and drove to Maplewood Elementary to pick up Brielle at the usual time. As I pulled into the pickup line, I could see the other parents in their sleek SUVs and luxury sedans, most of them dressed in business attire or expensive workout clothes. I've gotten used to feeling a little out of place in my faded jeans and worn sneakers, but it never bothered me much because Brielle always seemed happy to see me. But that afternoon was different. When Brielle walked out of the school building, her head was down and her shoulders were slumped. Her usual bouncy walk was replaced by slow, heavy steps. Even from a distance, I could tell something was terribly wrong. She climbed into the back seat of our car without her typical chatter about her day, and when I looked at her in the rearview mirror, I saw tears streaming down her cheeks. "Honey, what's wrong?" I asked, immediately pulling out of the pickup line and into a nearby parking space. But Brielle just shook her head and looked out the window, her small hands balled into fists in her lap. The ride home was silent except for her occasional sniffles, and my heart was racing with worry about what could have happened to upset her so much. The moment we walked through our apartment door, Brielle threw her backpack on the floor with unusual force and ran straight to her bedroom. I followed her, finding her face down on her bed, sobbing into her pillow. I sat down beside her and gently rubbed her back, waiting for her to be ready to talk. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were red and swollen, and my heart broke at the sight of her pain. "Mom, are we poor?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hit me like a physical blow. In all my worries about raising her alone, about working nights, about the sacrifices we both made, I had never prepared myself for this moment. I had never imagined that my 8-year-old daughter would have to confront the reality of our financial situation in such a painful way. "What happened at school today, baby?" I asked, keeping my voice calm even though panic was rising in my chest. Through her tears, Brielle told me about what had occurred during lunch. The third graders had been talking about their parents' jobs, sharing stories about where their moms and dads worked. When it was Brielle's turn, she had proudly announced that her mom was a nurse who worked at the hospital. "That's when Crew laughed," she said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "He said that only poor people's moms have to work at night when kids are supposed to be sleeping. He said rich kids' moms get to stay home or work during the day like normal people do." All the other kids started looking at me funny, and some of them laughed too. My hands clenched into fists as she continued. Crew had apparently gone on to explain to the lunch table that his mom worked at a law firm during regular business hours and was always home for dinner. He said that people who work nights do it because they can't get real jobs that pay enough to support their families properly. The casual cruelty of his words, delivered with the thoughtless confidence of a child who had never wanted for anything, made my blood boil. Then he asked me if we live in an apartment because we can't afford a real house, Brielle continued, her voice getting smaller with each word. And when I said yes, he told everyone that apartments are where poor people live. He said that's probably why you have to work weird hours, because we need extra money just to pay rent. The worst part was how the other children had reacted. Instead of defending Brielle or changing the subject, several of them had started asking her invasive questions about our living situation. Did we have a car payment? Did we shop at the expensive grocery store or the discount one? Did I have a college degree? The interrogation had continued until Mrs. Lennox noticed Brielle's distress and redirected the conversation, but the damage was already done. "Am I weird because my mom isn't home when other moms are?" Brielle asked, looking up at me with eyes that held a new kind of awareness, a painful understanding that our family was different in ways that apparently mattered to other people. "Does working at night mean we're poor? Does being poor mean there's something wrong with us?" Seeing Brielle's pain cut deeper than any criticism I'd ever faced as an adult, my first instinct was to get angry, to call the school and demand that Crew face consequences for his cruel words. I wanted to march into that classroom and explain to a bunch of 8-year-olds why their assumptions about our life were wrong and hurtful. But as I looked at my daughter's tear-stained face, I realized that anger wouldn't heal the damage that had already been done to her sense of self-worth. Instead, I took a deep breath and made a choice that would change everything for both of us. I wasn't going to defend our circumstances or make excuses for our situation. I was going to help Brielle see our life through a completely different lens, one that would transform her shame into something much more powerful. "Come here, baby," I said, patting my lap. Brielle climbed up and curled against me, her small body still shaking with leftover sobs. I held her close and began to speak in a voice that was steady and sure, even though my heart was racing. "I want to tell you something important about the work I do, something that might help you understand why I'm so proud of my job." I started by painting a picture of what really happens at City General Hospital when the sun goes down. Brielle, when you're sleeping safely in your bed, there are people all over our city who are scared, hurt, and in need of help. Babies decide they're ready to be born at 2 in the morning. Car accidents happen on dark highways. Grandparents have heart attacks in the middle of the night. Moms and dads get sick and need someone to take care of them when their families are asleep. Brielle's crying had stopped, and I could feel her attention focusing on my words. When those things happen, there are special people who stay awake all night to help. Police officers, firefighters, doctors, and nurses like me. We work when most people are sleeping because emergencies don't wait for convenient times. The world needs people who are willing to be awake and ready to help when others need us most. I told her about Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who had come to our emergency room the week before, frightened and alone after falling in her kitchen at midnight. I held her hand while the doctor examined her broken wrist, I explained. I stayed with her for 3 hours, talking to her about her garden and her grandchildren, making sure she didn't feel scared or abandoned. When her son finally arrived, he hugged me and said I was an angel for taking such good care of his mother. Brielle sat up straighter, her eyes beginning to show curiosity instead of sadness. "Did you really help her feel better?" she asked, and I could hear a note of pride creeping back into her voice. "What else do you do at night?" I shared story after story, carefully choosing examples that would help her understand the true nature of my work. I told her about the night I helped deliver twins when the regular delivery nurse called in sick, about the teenager who came in after a skateboarding accident and how I stayed past my shift to make sure he wasn't afraid when he went into surgery, about the woman who had been in a car crash and how I comforted her while we waited for her husband to arrive. My job isn't about when I work, Brielle. It's about why I work, I said, watching her process this new perspective. Some jobs have to happen at night because people need help all the time, not just during business hours. When Crew's mom goes to sleep, she's done helping people for the day. But when I go to work, I'm just getting started. I'm there for people during their scariest, most difficult moments. I could see the wheels turning in Brielle's mind as she began to understand that our situation wasn't a sign of failure or poverty, but rather a reflection of purpose and service. You know what the most important part is? I continued. Every single night when I leave for work, I think about you sleeping peacefully in your bed. I think about how lucky you are to live in a safe place where you can dream big dreams. And I go to work knowing that I'm helping make sure other people's children get to feel that same safety and security. Brielle was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her reframing everything she thought she knew about our life. So you work nights to help people who can't wait until morning? She asked, and I nodded. And I get to sleep and dream because other kids' moms and dads are safe because you're taking care of them? Exactly, I said, kissing the top of her head. My job means that families don't have to face their scariest moments alone. It means that when someone needs help at 3 a.m, there's someone there who cares about them and knows how to make them feel better. That night, as I tucked Brielle into bed before leaving for work, something had fundamentally shifted between us. She looked up at me with eyes that held a new kind of understanding and said, "Mom, I think your job is really important." The next morning, when I picked Brielle up from school, I could immediately tell that something was different. Instead of the usual tired shuffle that most kids have at the end of a school day, she practically bounced toward our car with an energy I hadn't seen since before the incident with Crew. Her backpack was swinging wildly as she half ran, half skipped across the pickup area, and when she climbed into the back seat, her face was glowing with excitement. "Mom, you'll never believe what happened today," she said before I could even ask about her day. Her words came tumbling out in a rush of enthusiasm that made my heart soar. "Mrs. Lennox let us do show and tell today, and I raised my hand to go first. I told everyone about what you really do at work." My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I tried to process what she was telling me. I had hoped that our conversation the night before would help her feel better about our situation, but I hadn't expected her to share it with her entire class. "What exactly did you tell them, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm while my heart raced with anticipation and worry. Brielle launched into a detailed account of what had happened during show and tell, and with each word I became more amazed by the transformation that had taken place in my 8-year-old daughter. She had stood up in front of her classmates with a confidence that stunned even Mrs. Lennox, and instead of defending our financial situation, she had completely reframed the entire conversation. "I looked right at Crew and said that he was wrong about why you work nights," Brielle explained, her voice filled with pride. "I told everyone that you don't work nights because we're poor. You work nights because people need help when it's dark and scary, and you're brave enough to be there for them when other people are sleeping safely at home." She described how the classroom had fallen completely silent as she began to speak, with even the most talkative students giving her their full attention. "I told them about Mrs. Patterson and how you held her hand when she was scared. I told them about the twins you helped deliver and how you stayed late to make sure that teenager wasn't afraid during his surgery. I explained that emergencies don't wait for daytime, so there have to be special people who are willing to work when everyone else is asleep." The reaction from her classmates had been immediate and powerful. Instead of the mockery and judgment that Crew had encouraged the day before, Brielle's words had created a wave of respect and admiration that completely shifted the dynamic in the classroom. Students who had laughed at our situation 24 hours earlier were now asking detailed questions about my work and expressing genuine amazement at what I did every night. "Sarah Williams asked if being a night nurse means you're like a superhero," Brielle continued, her excitement building as she recounted each response. "And Marcus said his grandpa was in the hospital last month and that the night nurses were the nicest people he met there. Even Jessica, who usually only talks about her mom's fancy job at the bank, said she thought your job sounded really important and meaningful." But the most significant change had come from Crew himself. After Brielle finished her presentation, He had sat in stunned silence for several minutes before slowly raising his hand. When Mrs. Lennox called on him, he had quietly admitted that his own father sometimes worked late shifts at his engineering firm when there were emergencies with construction projects. He said he never thought about how there are lots of jobs that have to happen at weird times to keep people safe, Brielle reported. And then he said he was sorry for making fun of us yesterday. Mrs. Lennox had been so moved by Brielle's presentation that she had wiped away tears while listening to her speak. After class, she had pulled Brielle aside to tell her how proud she was of the way she had handled the situation. She said, "I taught the whole class something important about not judging people without understanding their story first," Brielle said, beaming with pride. The ripple effects had continued throughout the rest of the school day. During recess, several students had approached Brielle to ask more questions about my work and to share stories about their own family members who worked unusual hours. The lunch table conversation that had been so painful the day before had been completely transformed, with kids now talking about the different ways their parents contributed to their community. The best part was when Emma Rodriguez said she wants to be a nurse like you when she grows up, Brielle concluded. She said, "Helping people who are scared sounds like the most important job in the world. And you know what, Mom?" I agreed with her. "I told everyone that working nights so I can dream big during the day makes you the best mom ever." As we pulled into our apartment complex, I realized that my daughter had accomplished something remarkable. She had taken a moment of shame and humiliation and transformed it into an opportunity to educate her peers about dignity, purpose, and the true meaning of service to others. When we got home that afternoon, I was still processing everything Brielle had told me about her day. As I watched her unpack her backpack with the same enthusiasm she'd shown all week, I realized that something fundamental had shifted, not just in how her classmates saw our family, but in how we saw ourselves. The shame and worry that had consumed me for the past 24 hours had been replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride in the remarkable young woman my daughter was becoming. About an hour later, my phone rang. When I saw that it was Mrs. Lennox calling, my first instinct was concern that maybe there had been some kind of problem or complaint about Brielle's presentation. Instead, her voice was filled with emotion as she shared what had happened from her perspective as Brielle's teacher. "Demi, I've been teaching third grade for 15 years, and I have never seen a student handle a difficult situation with such grace and maturity," Mrs. Lennox said, her voice slightly shaky. What Brielle did today wasn't just impressive for an 8-year-old. It was impressive for anyone of any age. She took a moment that could have defined her negatively and turned it into a teaching opportunity for her entire class. Mrs. Lennox went on to explain that the impact of Brielle's words had extended far beyond the immediate classroom moment. Throughout the rest of the day, she had observed students treating each other with more thoughtfulness and curiosity, rather than judgment. "Crew came up to me after lunch and asked if we could do a unit on community helpers who work different hours," she said. "He specifically wanted to learn about all the people who keep us safe while we sleep. Your daughter didn't just defend herself today, Demi. She opened up a whole new way of thinking for these kids." The phone call lasted nearly 30 minutes, with Mrs. Lennox sharing detail after detail about how Brielle's presentation had affected not just the students, but her own perspective as an educator. "I realized that I had been making assumptions too," she admitted. "When I see parents at pickup time, I sometimes make judgments about their situations without really understanding their stories." Brielle reminded all of us that every family has value and purpose, regardless of their circumstances. That evening, as I was getting ready for work, Brielle approached me with a confidence I had never seen before. Instead of the usual quiet sadness that accompanied my departure for my night shift, she looked at me with eyes full of admiration and pride. "Mom, I understand now why you leave every night," she said, wrapping her arms around my waist. "You're not just going to work. You're going to be someone's hero when they need help the most." The transformation in how she viewed my departure was complete and profound. Where there had once been a hint of sadness or confusion about why I had to leave when other moms were staying home, there was now genuine excitement about the important work I was heading out to do. "When I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to think about all the people you're helping feel better," she said, "and I'm going to be proud that you're my mom." Over the following weeks, the changes in Brielle's social life at school were remarkable. Parents began reaching out to me with playdates and birthday party invitations, not out of pity, but out of genuine respect for our family. Several mothers mentioned that their children had come home talking about Brielle's presentation and asking questions about different types of jobs and the importance of helping others. Cru's mother even called to apologize for her son's behavior and to share that the incident had sparked important conversations in their household about privilege, respect, and the value of all types of work. Cru has been asking to volunteer at community service projects, she said. He wants to understand better how he can help people the way your family does. Most importantly, I realized that my greatest fear as a single mother had been completely unfounded. I had worried that our financial struggles and my unconventional work schedule would somehow diminish Brielle or make her feel inferior to her peers. Instead, these challenges had given her something that many children from more privileged backgrounds might never develop: a deep understanding of purpose, empathy, and the strength that comes from knowing your family's struggles have meaning. Brielle never again came home from school feeling ashamed of our circumstances. Instead, she became our family's proudest advocate, sharing stories about my work with anyone who would listen and defending other children when they face similar judgments about their families' situations. The night that started with my daughter crying about being called poor ended with her understanding that wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with purpose, love, and the courage to serve others when they need it most. She learned that working nights doesn't make someone less valuable. It makes them essential to a world that needs help around the clock. If this story touched your heart, please share it with others who might need to hear this message. Comment below about a time when someone changed your perspective on what really matters in life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about finding strength in unexpected places.